guys, I'm Stef, and I'm a hacker. I bet some of you are now a little bit worried about the kind of presentation I'm about to give you. Don't worry, I am not that kind of hacker. The word hacker has become kind of associated with people who like to break into computers and cause damage, cause negative things to happen. And actually there's a new emerging definition of that word that's more about creativity, and that's the kind of hacker that I am. I like to make things quickly using freely available tools and software. I try to solve problems in a really, really quick, sketchy way. And I've come up with this definition of the way that I work, and I call it sketching with code. And code is the kind of base unit that we use to create software and to create the digital world that we all are now used to using. But often it's seen as something that's quite an edifice. That code and software is something for people who really know what they're doing, and those guys are serious and they know what they're up to, so we better trust them. Whereas actually I think that creating software and creating digital things is often, it can often be looked at as an art as well as a science. And so I tried to practice some of the art with software. So today I'm going to talk about some of my work, but basically my core principle. And this is a principle I've had for the last 16 years, and it's to create something every day. Often that's with code and with software, and I'll show you some of those examples. But also I do interesting little things, and sometimes these little tiny things turn into businesses. And over the past few years, I've created a design company, a video startup business. I've done all sorts of things, a record label, and all of these things have come from tiny little ideas and the practice of creating something every day. The brief today was to give the talk that scares you. And the talk that scares me today is this, because it itself is a hack. So I've hacked my own talk. It's a bit meta, but I've programmed this talk in a way that I don't know what's going to happen next. I made a folder, and I put a load of stuff in it. I thought about it a lot. I gathered some of the things that I've written about, some of the things I've made, and I've now made a piece of software that will randomize across all the slides, and I will attempt to make some kind of sense out of the last 16 years of my life for you. I think a lot of other people at this event will be able to give a kind of coherent narrative of their life. Personally, when I was sitting there long into the night trying to work out what I could tell you, it didn't feel like I could give that clean, neat narrative. So I thought, let's do it the hacker way and let's program it. So I have approached this thing with software. So without further ado, I'm just going to bash through these slides and tell you what I've learned, and hopefully something will emerge. So please, I would appreciate your support as we go. Okay, this is number 17. Each one of these slides is a number, and it's given me this first. Have a messy house. My house is messy. Okay. No, my house is messy because I have a creative environment, and I think that there's a concept of leaning in. Have you read about this? Lean in. You know, that's where you focus and you step into the opportunity space and you try to make a difference. But if you're tying yourself down with having to kind of maintain various other things around you, then often you can't focus on really making a dent in the world, and something has to give. And I think the messiness of my home, and sometimes the messiness of the way that I work, actually reflects my ability to really focus on getting something done. And it was only quite recently that I realized that I was allowing myself to forgive myself to have a messy home, because the contrast was that I was able to focus on doing interesting work. Next. This is a book that I had as a child, Make and Program Your Own Robots. And it's something I'm now doing with my kids. I think something that's really inspired me in my own creativity is to try and explain to others the beauty of what you can achieve with code. And something I try to do when I sit down and talk to people about software and what's possible with the digital tools we have is that you don't have to spend ages over something. You can get something that's freely available and make a really interesting thing in a short space of time. And so I come home with a robot kit for my kids, and I show them they can sit there, follow some instructions, and make a really cool little robot, or make a toy that beeps, or do something interesting. And that same approach can apply in business, and that's something that I'm applying in my own work, in that I try to do the smallest, tiniest thing very, very quickly with people in a collaborative, interesting way. I think it comes back to the books we read as kids, because these little inspirations, often you don't notice them until later in life. And I love it. I found this book in the loft the other day, and I dug it out, and now I have it around, because it really reminds me that you can do really cool things with Lego and with pens. And this is how we might inspire the next generation to start sketching the code themselves. Oh, this is cute. Making up stories. So my theme is creating something every day. And so at the beginning of the day, I kind of wake up. And back when I had this idea of trying to create something every day, I was really obsessing over it and thinking, gosh, I've really got to think about what it is that I'm going to make. Like, it's got to be something really meaningful. It's got to be something that's going to make money for me. It's going to be something really serious. And as my process has developed over the last few years, I've really enjoyed coming home at bedtime with the kids, and I'd encourage any of you who've got kids to do this, to do exactly what I'm doing just now. Sit there with the kids in bed and just make up a story on the spot. I've been doing this all year. It's really cool. I have this little rhyme that I started with. Are you feeling comfy? Are you all tucked in? Do you have your ears on? Then I shall begin. And then I just begin. And that improvisation really frees you up for other kinds of creativity in your life. And the biggest effect that it's had on me personally, I think, has been that I don't say as much anymore, I've noticed. Oops. Had to do it. The cool thing with doing stories is that there's something that anyone can do, and getting into that rhythm of making something every day, it splurges out into everything else around you, and you can find it in your work and the way that you think about what's possible in a very short space of time. Because if you've got 6 minutes spare, and you think, oh, hang on, I made up a story in 6 minutes flat the other day, suddenly you start thinking about the time that you have available and what you could achieve in it. Oh, and all my stories are online, actually. I made up one last night for this. It was called The Idea Farm. Have a listen. It's on my website. It was quite cool. It's a farm that grows ideas. See what I did there? See? Anyway, do all the things. I think this is the curse. This is the kind of the dark side of trying to be creative every day of your life. Because you, as a person, and knowing that there are so many different things that you can do in the world, how is it that you can choose how you spend your day? So if you have the available tools of the internet at your fingertips and you know how to use them, if you can paint, if you can draw, if you can stand up in front of an audience, how do you choose where to direct your attention? And this is something that I've really struggled with over the years, that because we are all able to do a great deal because we're in such a position of privilege, how do you choose where to put your energy on a given day? And indeed, if you're doing something like this process of trying to create something every single day of your life, doesn't that just mean you're going to be making a small dent in the world, like you're making tiny things? And does that matter if you're only making tiny things? Should you be focusing on one grand idea and following through on that? Or is there something to be said for trying lots of small things out and seeing what works and then maybe develop them? And that's the latter is what I've been trying to do. So the tiny, small experiments that I do of a given day, sometimes they do turn into businesses because I follow through on them. This segues quite well, but of course, this idea of being creative every day comes with an implied level of work. I'm sure many of you have felt that feeling of flow, of being absolutely engaged in your work, sitting there, absolutely, utterly focused on doing a task. And then you look up and the work has kind of made itself magically somehow. And something that I've noticed in myself is that when I'm doing my best work, it's often when my wife or someone who's sitting next to me just says to me, Steph, don't forget to eat. I think this is a great measure of whether you're having a good time. If someone says, don't forget to eat, then that must mean you're really engaged in your work. And I quite like this when someone says it to me, because I know that I'm in a good mode. I'm not in a down mode. And actually trying to seek that flow is something that I think is a thing that drives many creative people, because we're really trying to find that brilliant moment, that brilliant period where you're focusing and you're really, really operating at the top level. Pay attention to the toys is a little mantra I've developed. I've noticed that when I'm playing and making tiny little experiments, often the things that work and the most interesting are toys, little things that I make for myself that I often don't think are going to be anything, but then turn into something useful. I think paying attention to what people class as toys, you can find businesses. So Instagram is a toy and is now a huge business. And there's opportunity when you start looking at playfulness, and that's something I've been exploring. Write something. I had no idea what writing was for. So I had no idea. I didn't write for years. And I would really encourage you guys, if you're not writing, just to maybe spend a few minutes just putting down some thoughts and putting it on the web. It's amazing. I kind of gave up on blogging for years. And last year, I just started writing about this process and about the principles that I have. And I got such good feedback that actually it's probably the reason I'm standing in front of you today, because I wrote down some of the ideas and I shared them with others. But it's not just the sharing part. It actually, by writing about the creative process you go through, you start self-evaluating your own work and your own flow. And that helps to improve what it is that you're doing. It helps you focus on what you should be doing. Such as this. I made this on a plane and on the train towards the plane. And it's this is an example of a hack. So this is a thing called Flounder. So if you're running a Twitter account for your company and you also have a Twitter account for yourself, what you do is sign up to Flounder, and this little robot listens to the people you're chatting to on your company account, and it makes you're chatting to yourself, and it makes your company account follow the people you're talking to. And so it kind of means that you're transferring your audience from yourself to your company Twitter account. But I made it in a few hours on a plane journey just to see if it was any good. And the process I go through is when I've made a hack like this. It's a toy. It's something I find useful for myself. I had a problem. I put it out almost immediately after I've made it. So I just put out a tweet saying, I've made this thing. Who would like to play with it? And then a couple of days later, I've got 300 people all giving me feedback, all playing with it and using it. And that helps me find out whether I've made something that's any use. Is this a thing I should turn into a business? Is this a business idea? Or is it a hack? And realizing that distinction is something that I've been struggling with. But taking that first step with a tiny little experiment helps me decide. Take a picture. I don't think I need to say much about that. Everyone here is taking pictures. I take pictures all the time as a kind of visual note-taking exercise. And it helps me remember the things that I should be remembering in my work. I'll skip that one, I think. Oh, here's attending. It's another hack. I did this in a day as well. And this has now turned into a business. So we now have several thousand users who are using attending to make tiny little event pages for their events. In fact, I've made one for today. And the idea is that you go onto attending, onto the event page, you say you're going, and then you can connect with all the other people who are also going because their Twitter account's there or their Facebook links are there. And it's very cute. It's come out quite dark there. There's supposed to be a picture of a field. It looks black. It's green here. OK. Do something you can. A lot of people feel there's a barrier to creating things specifically in digital. Anyone who hasn't got a digital background can feel like there's a big barrier towards whether they can step into that world and do anything on the web. And I quite like saying, do something you can't. There are plenty of examples of things I've done where I've absolutely no idea when I start them whether I'm going to be able to follow through. Constraint is your friend. The limitation I always set on myself when I'm making a hack or doing this kind of creating something everyday activity is the time. Other constraints are also great. So if you look at the Casio keyboard, it's very limited in the kind of sounds available, but yet you can make amazing music with it. The 808 drum machine is a perfect example of creative limitation. And sometimes by constraining myself into a tiny tool set, I'm able to make something really interesting. And so I really try to stick with this, this constraint idea in all of my hacks. I've got loads more. Oh, let's do this one. This one tiny last thing. This is an example of a hack that wasn't really digital. I went to a hack day, and I'm sure you're familiar with a hack day, and we made a cryptographic quilt. So this contains an encoded family secret, deep, dark family secret, with a password on it that can only be decoded if you can decode that image. I also wore my own credit card details in the Financial Times without them knowing, by encoding them into a T-shirt. And you do. So I think we're out of time on my little random hack here, but I want to end on some thoughts. So this is, that all sounds great. How do you make money? So I now have a company called Makeshift, and the idea is that we do tiny little experimental hacks on various different ideas, all of which give a leg up to the little guy. That's our core principle. And when we do these little experiments, we're trying to find a potential business. And if we find that we get a good signal back about the business, then we invest in it and turn that into a company. And in the first year of the company we've made 12 different products. We've thrown away 9 and we've kept 3. And we're able to turn those into successful things. But back to my creating something every day theme. I think I need to tell you why I'm doing this. It's because of the end. There's a word I've coined, more to go. I'm sure you'll all have experienced this. It's that horrible moment when you suddenly realize, remember, or think about the fact that you're going to die. It's that spinning feeling in your gut. It's that kind of horrible confusion that you get when you try to contemplate your own end. And the thing is that when I was 20, when I started this process, 16 years ago, I was in hospital, and I had been admitted because I'd had a sudden acute illness. And the end result was that basically I had a tiny brain tumor. I'm totally fine today, but I was acutely ill, and in times gone past, I would have immediately died. And that kind of thing really makes you think about what it is that you're doing. And I woke up, and I had a sketch pad next to me. And up until that point, I was just a computer science student, drifting through university, not really in any direction. And in that pad, I just started writing down loads of ideas that I wanted to achieve in my time on the world. To go one step further, let's go for it. You know, if you think about it, there is this really shocking thing to think about that's even bigger than your own death, and that's like the eventual end of the universe. Like, we only have this one life. I'm a humanist, so I believe in a kind of naturalist worldview. And in that moment of waking up with that sense of my own mortality, that more to go, thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my time? What shall I do? And that's that realization that that there's an end to it all is what drove me down this path. I needed to choose something that would allow me to bring some meaning to what it is that I am and what I'm doing. And in this talk, I've shown you these random slides, this kind of random slice through my life. Rather than giving that kind of hero's journey narrative, this is the beginning of that story, and it doesn't really have an end. The thing with the eventual heat death of the universe is that it's down to entropy. And entropy is a force that we all must obey. It's a thing that drags us down. It's why hard biscuits go soft and soft cake goes hard over time. It's why this room is rotten and has aged. But the thing is, there is great beauty in the things around us that have aged and have decayed. This room has it is the epitome of the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi. It's being able to understand that there's beauty in things decaying and passing. But if there's one thing I know about life, it's this. Life is the opposite of entropy. We're a force against it. We grow in complexity over time. The fact that we are these complex beings is the entire opposite of that idea of there being an eventual heat death of the universe. And so, for me, I try to create order, and I try to instill creativity in others, because creativity and being creative is the opposite of being entropic. So I'll end on this note. We're here at Do, so do it now. Sometimes tomorrow becomes never. Thank you.